All right, y'all, we are going to look at how to solve two-step equations with just the math process. So we've been looking at how to do this with the pictures. So if the pictures are still helping you, you can go ahead and draw those. But now I'm going to show you how to do this with just the math itself. So remember, we're going to use our see and solve. So we're working backwards. So what you see mathematically in the problem is following your order of operations. And how we're going to solve that is by going backwards. So for example, if I write my see and solve for this problem, kind of helps me out step by step. What I see first, if I knew what x was in this problem, is I see 3x plus 4. So if I see this problem right here, this process, a number next to a letter, that's our coefficient, and then this plus 4 is the constant. So order of operations, we're always going to multiply first and then add or subtract. So if I see multiply by 3, then after I multiply by 3, I would add 4. So in order to solve this, I'm going to go backwards. So the opposite of adding 4 is subtracting 4, or adding 4 negatives to each side. How I get rid of times 3, the inverse operation of multiply by 3, is divide by 3. So this is how we're going to solve it. So watch your arrow going up. We're not dividing by 3 first and then subtracting 4. We're going backwards like this. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of my constant of that plus 4 with 4 negatives. Again, your whole goal is to get the x's by itself. So 4 negatives combined with 4 positives cancel out, and that gets you your 3x on the left. Negative 2 minus 4. Now remember, if you have negative 2, can you take away 4 positives? This is why we reviewed subtracting is really add a line, change the next sign. It's really adding the opposite. So if you have 2 negatives and 4 more negatives, then you have negative 6 over here. Okay? So now 3 x's are sharing 6 negatives, but if I want 1 3 by itself, the opposite of multiply by 3 is divide by 3. So x equals 6 divided by 3 is 2. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. So we're thinking that our final answer is negative 2, but again, we can always check. So let's see, 3x plus 4 equals to negative 2. So we're going to substitute negative 2 where we see that x. 3 groups of negative 2 plus 4 equals negative 2. And we want these to be balanced on each side to make sure the equation is a true statement. So 3 groups of negative 2, because I multiply first, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Bring everything else down. 6 negatives and 4 positives would create some 0 pairs. And 6 minus 4 is 2. There's more negatives. And sure enough, it checks out. So we know we're right. So this is what we want you to try and do after you solve for your variable to make sure it's right. So here are our steps. You are going to get rid of the constant first. That's just the number. So you're going to add or subtract based on what you were doing in the problem. You're doing the inverse. And then for today's lesson, we're going to divide by the coefficient. So this is a whole number of 3, positive 3, so that's why we divide by 3. So we'll get into when we might multiply and when we're going to divide, but today those are just our steps. Okay, again, if you think about it, it's the inverse operation. So I'm going to try a couple more problems, and then so I'll try 3 more, and then the last 2 I'll put up here for you to try out, and then you can check with your teacher to make sure that you're correct. Okay? So again, it doesn't matter what side the variable is on. It could be on the left, or it could be on the right-hand side like this, but you're looking on the side with where the variable is. You want to get rid of that constant first. So we want the 2x's by itself, so we need to get rid of the minus 3 or 3 negatives, so we add 3. And remember, what you do to one side, you do to the other. We are doing inverse operations. So then that gets me 2x 1 positive and 3 more positives is equal to 4. So 2 x's, if you think about that visually, are sharing 4 positives. So we need to put the x's into 2 groups to get 1x by itself. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Again, we can check that with the math as well. So 2x minus 3 equals 1. We're checking to see if our answer is correct. So we're going to take the 2 and plug it in where we see x. Order of operations, say and multiply first. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 3 equals 1. 4 minus 3 is 1. So we have a 1 on both sides, so it is balanced, it is true. So again, if you need to practice writing the C in solve, I didn't write it on this one, we just talked about it. You would multiply by 2 first and then subtract by 3. So the opposite of subtract 3 is add 3. The opposite of multiply by 2 is divide by 2. And that's what we did. We added 3, then we divided by 2. So you are math detectives. You're working backwards. Okay? That's how I always think about it. So let's keep going. So this side, you're used to seeing the x's or the variables on the left and just your number by itself, but they switched it around. Same process. So look on the side where you have x. We are going to add or subtract the constant first. So we need to get rid of the negative 2 with positive 2, or that subtract 2 with adding 2. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So 4 plus 2 is 6. And then these cancel out, which is what we want. We've got one step closer to those x's being by themselves. Now, am I going to divide by 6 or 3? Well, let's look. With the side of the variable, the coefficient, the number working with the variable, is 3. So if I see multiply by 3, I'm going to divide by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and that gets me x by itself. So don't let it be confusing if the x's are on the right or if the x's are on the left. You're going to still do the same process. And here again, we want to encourage you to check your work so you can tell us if you got 100 before we even grade it. So if I substitute the number 2 where I see x, 4 is on the left, 3 groups of 2 is 6. Bring down the minus 2. 6 minus 2 is 4, so it works out. So these just so happen to be the same answer. Okay, so you always want to check your work to make sure that you're right. All right, let's look at this next one. So this is written a little bit differently. The coefficient's not first with the variable, the constant is. So over here, the coefficient and the variable were first, and then the constant, but it's still the same process. So we want these 2 x's ultimately by itself. So we need to get rid of just this 3. There's no sign in front of that 3. So if there's no sign in front of that, that means it's a positive 3. So the opposite of positive 3 is 3 negatives. So this cancels out. Gets me 2x by itself. 7 minus 3, or 7 combined with 3 negatives, is 4. 2 x's are sharing 4. So we're going to divide by the coefficient because we see a 2 in front, which means multiply by 2. So do the inverse operation, and look, it ended up being 2 again. So again, some of you might have seen this if this were a test question and kind of second-guessed yourself because you're like, could they really all be 2? Well, yeah, you can check your work to make sure. So let's look. So our original equation was 3 plus 2x is equal to 7. So I'm going to substitute the x that I got was 2. Make sure we got it right. So we don't do 3 plus 2 because this variable and the coefficient and the variable mean multiply right there. So we need to do that first. So when I do my math, I have to cover things up so I'm not distracted. And then 3 plus 4 is 7. So is this equation balanced? Are they worth the same value on each side? Hopefully you said yes. And when you check these out, that means that these were the only values that could have been substituted in for this equation to make it true. Okay? So if you'd like to try these next 2 problems out and then message your teacher, email them, and we can let you know if you got them right. Okay? So remember, you can use your C and solve. We're going to be adding or subtracting the constant. and then we're going to divide by the coefficient today to help you out with those two-step equations.